Hi, everyone. Welcome to Season 8, Episode 6 of the FIX. This is Angel Borrelli, and I am here with my favorite in-house baseball coach and co-host for this season, Larry Owens. Hey, Larry, how you doing?
Angel, doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great, too. Are you holding up? It's almost the end of the season, right?
We're nearing the end. Yes, we're holding up fine. Holding up just fine.
That's great. That's great. Well, listen, I want to kick this off right away and put you always in the hot seat because I like asking you a question. But something I noticed, and then I read a very interesting report yesterday. So when I was watching, I haven't watched games in a few weeks, but for the first few weeks I was watching, and I was noticing that a lot of the hitters were being hit with a pitch. Some to the point where it actually did look intentional, and they would give a story about, oh, these two guys were doing this. So much so the dugouts were emptying. There were fights on the field. Then I noticed the fight stopped, but it seemed like almost every game I tuned into, someone got hit. And we're not just talking little hits. So I haven't watched in a few weeks. And then a report came across my desk yesterday, and they gave the stat. And there's a hitter, I think it's Acuña, if that's how you say his name. I think he's been hit more times this season than they named some like great hitter in his whole career. His stat is lower than Acuña's for this season. And I'm like, I knew it. And they're talking about how the pitches that everyone's trying to pitch inside, but the balls are high and the hitters are taking a beating. And they said the stat is so out of control that, it's concerning. And this writer ended the story with, now we know why Cole and DeGrom and Glasnow and Bieber are so great and how much we appreciate them because they know how to control a pitch. And I should have Trevor Bauer in that group as well. And they said, we would love to see more pitchers controlling their pitch. And I wanted to ask you about it because as someone who's not on that side of the plate, and I'm thinking to myself, I think we always wonder in some situations if it's intentional. We also wonder, are the hitters standing in too close to the plate and are they creating a problem? Are the pitchers trying to throw too hard? How do you, as a head coach, see that situation? And what have you noticed about it?
Well, it's happening. For starters, I'm looking at Baseball Reference right now, and hit by pitch per game has gone up. It's continued to rise since 87. It's just continued to go up. In the 80s, it was around, it was around 0.2 a game. Now you're up to 0.47, almost a half hit by pitch a game. In 21, this is the highest it's ever been per game in the history of the game. So, that's one reason. One major reason, I think, is that a lot of guys are chasing velocity, which that's been going on for a while. And, command's down. Guys are more concerned with stuff overall. And so I think you're seeing some balls getting away from some guys. Control and command's not too in vogue right now. And you're seeing it. And then part of it is Major League Baseball has taken away the ability for the players to police the game. Years ago, the players policed the game, say 60s, 70s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, they policed the game where if our best player got hit or kept getting pitched inside and got hit, then, they were going to get your best player, and it was going to happen. But the hit by pitches were way down. I'm looking at it right now in the 70s, 80s, it was below 0.2, where now it's 0.47. Now today, they won't let the players police the game. So as soon as somebody gets hit, warnings go out immediately. If they think it was intentional. So
were pitchers throwing 100 miles an hour back then?
There were guys that did. I just don't know. That's the big thing too. The radar guns are different. I remember coaching in college in the 90s, and we used to know it was called a ray gun. It picked it up. It just depends. All the radar guns are accurate. It just depends on where they get the ball. They get the ball closer to the pitcher's hand, it's going to read higher. And so as technology gets better, as these radar guns get better, they're picking up the ball right out of the hand. So the velocities are going to read probably a little bit higher. That's one thing. I think there's probably more guys that throw hard. I'm not sure that there are guys that throw any harder than the hardest throwers 30, 40 years ago. I don't believe that, but that's up for debate, I suppose. But I think there's more of them, and I think the focus on that has led to less control and less command. Control strikes and command hitting the glove, and it's tough. Like the kid that there was somebody that stuck out the other day. I guess Bryce Harper got hit in the face the other day, not too long ago, and it's left on left, hard thrower, and then I felt, as everybody else did, it was unintentional, but it got handled. So they hit. Somebody got hit as a result, and it's kind of a you almost have to, at that level, to send a message to send a message to the other manager. Hey, if that guy can't control the ball or command the ball, don't put him in the game, because you're going to get someone else hurt. So it's a big, and that's the only level, I think, at which that stuff is even remotely appropriate, when they're doing it professionally for a living and trying to make a lot of money doing it. At the amateur level, at our level in college and high school, there's you got no business throwing at somebody. You get absolutely no business doing it. I don't believe so.
Yeah, and that was a question I was going to ask you, because what's interesting to me is, so this article was pretty thorough, definitely a bona fide author. The stats were astounding. This went on and on talking about it, and it did come back onto, like, the pitchers need to learn to control these high-powered fastballs. But I was also thinking it's unusual because this season we've had so many no hitters. So we've got pitchers that are so good, they're throwing no hitters, yet we've got all these hitters being hit with the pitch. And I'm like, something's not making sense here. And then I thought to myself, well, everybody's trying to throw harder. I don't care what level you're at, because that seems to be the name of the game now. And I'm thinking, so, but in colleges, you don't have those battles with each other, with this player and this pitcher, and they had an argument. And so, well, we're going to get you this time now that we're in your home park. And I was going to ask you if you see the same trend with pitchers in colleges, whether it's your team or the teams you play, or even the ones you watch. Is there there's got to be still the trend of trying to get this high spin rate, get the high velocity. Is there also the trend there of a lack of control? There may not be the purposeful, the pitch hitting the hitter, but do you see that same type of trend in lack of control?
Yeah, absolutely. I tracked some numbers on it years ago. I'm actually pulling them up right now. But yeah, you see over the years, I tracked from 2012 to 2020, and walks per 9 innings, wild pitches per 9 innings. I didn't track, I don't believe I tracked hit by pitch. I didn't, but they definitely went up. I mean, from 2012, walks per 9 inning at the Division I level went up from 3.7 per 9 to 4.4 per
Wow.
9, which is, and it's just a steady increase. So as you seek, and then on the other end, you have offensively too, where everybody's preaching. It's been stressed to hit the ball in the air more. So guys are trying to hit the ball in the air more, and they're trying to hit for extra bases a little more often. So consequently, strikeouts go up. So strikeouts went up quite a bit. Strikeouts went up at the Division I level, 106,000 in 2012 to 129,000 in 2019.
Wow.
At the same rate, walks went up too. Walks went up from 59,000 in 2012 to 70,000 in 2019. So it's a little bit of everything. Power both ways. Hitters are trying to hit the ball in the ballpark, so strikeouts are going to go up, and velocity is probably up across the board, and guys are trying to elevate fastballs and throw really hard and don't really care where it's going. So walks are going to go up, strikeouts are going to go up, home runs are going to go up because you're trying to hit them, and it's just, I think it just goes with what we see, in regards to what's being taught at different levels, what's important, and it's just it's a trend I hope will kind of come back to normal, where it's important to be productive at the plate and produce runs, not do it all with one swing, and that it's important to, throw the ball over the plate. It doesn't seem too important, the past 5, 6, 7 years.
Yes, yes. Well, this is a perfect topic to help me segue into what I wanted to talk about. I never every week I think, gee, what should the topic be? And then it sort of like comes to me. I don't ever even have to think too hard. And I think I've mentioned to you and to the listeners, I've been obsessed with researching the fingers and the hand and the wrist, and because spin rate has become such a topic. And my job is to take everything that's going on and try to take it back to the body. because I work with the body. So if somebody's having trouble with something, I try to see how can I translate this into something physical, which then means it's tangible, which then means it's changeable. Okay. And everything about pitching, the pitch itself and the spin and everything always seems so abstract to everybody, but everybody's trying to find a way to increase spin rate and pitch design and do this and that. But my job as a kinesiologist working with pitchers is to take this and back it up into, well, what produces control? What gives you location? What do you have to do? Not just mentally. We know a lot of it's mental too, but what can we work on physically? So I've been working for weeks thinking I've been wanting to talk about the hand. But then when this came up, I said, you know what? Why don't I dial this in? And why don't I see if I can come up with some things that are happening on the location level and the way the fingers control things? And then I realized I've been doing research on the fingers and hands for years because it's the craziest research. It's like the worst research to read in the world. It's got numbers, more numbers and graphs and things that are so difficult to grasp when you have a brain like mine, which is concepts. And so I said, oh, and I started reading it. And then I started thinking to myself, you know what? There's something we're missing. And I haven't completely missed it, but I haven't looked at it the way I'm looking at it today after putting everything together for this show. But the finger muscles that control the ball, the way they work is in such a unique way. And the amount of force they have to use against the ball, and the way they produce the pitch, and the scientists out there who are looking at this, their work is amazing. And when you read the research and you start putting it together, you start to get a sense of we need to have the pitchers pay more attention to the ball in their hand and the way the hand relates to that ball. And the way that by doing that, you bring that in as a conscious part of what you're doing, and especially before games and as part of the warm up, and particularly in the gym, so that we can get our guys' hands stronger. And nowhere do you really ever see anybody talk about, I mean, it doesn't sound exciting. It's like, let's get the butt stronger. Let's get the legs stronger. Let's make the elbow stronger. Let's make the shoulder stronger. But guess what? The very last thing that applies anything to the ball is from the wrist to the fingertips. And if you don't have that going on, and I thought to myself when I first started studying pitching, and tell me if I'm right. I used to I when I first started studying it, and wasn't working. I was a strength coach, but I would talk to pitching coaches, go to teams, watch things being done, and there was always a sense that the pitcher had to be careful about the way he gripped the ball. He couldn't grip it too tight. He had to like have it in his fingertips. I got the sense that you had to really be kind of easy with the way you held the ball. Now, is that correct?
Yeah, I think there's certainly a more proper way and a more improper way to do it. But yeah, you don't want to squeeze the heck out of it, and so yeah, I think there's definitely something to the grip, of course.
And I think what happened or what happens is something gets taken too far, because I know the more I've worked with the fingers and the grip recently, especially on my youth pitchers, if I am talking to them about their grip, sometimes it looks like it's just flailing in their hand. And every time I tell them to have it actually secure it a little better, their pitch always improves and they love it, and they can tell they get more spin, etc. So I think sometimes with the way things happen again in youth baseball, because kids start playing and they develop things, I think there's been a lack of attention to what actually happens with the fingers, but more so the strength of the fingers. specifically the strength of the fingertips and the way the fingertips move to hold the ball, and they also produce the friction against the seams. So what I wanted to talk about today is share some of the coolest things that I discovered that you may or may not know about. People may already know some of this stuff, but to just kind of bring it all into one summary and one package, so then we can start to add things in that actually develop the hand and allow the pitcher to get a feel for his own grip and what can change, not to be afraid of changing some pressure, not to be afraid of doing drills, but then kind of take and integrate it with who he is and see what the pitcher can do with it. Because that's one thing I know from working with pitchers. I don't ever really go in and change something. I educate them, and they're so good. I figure this, they know how to pitch. I know about the body and the pitching motion. If I can tell them that, they can take that and they can integrate it in this very special way that they do so that they can actually maybe make an alteration that actually improves things. Because pitchers get into a place where they do everything the same way all the time. The other beauty of all of this, and I've said this so many times, is, the injuries are up right now as well. And again, we've got these forearm injuries. And the forearm that everybody complains about, the part of the forearm is the part under the crease on the inside of the elbow, but it's a little below the crease. It's on that sort of the inside of the forearm. So the emphasis is always with pronation, meaning turning the hand, because, those muscles turn the forearm, which turn the hand to create the pitch. But I've had pitchers with unusual pain, and it did not get better until I started working with the fingers. And because the finger muscles run up right underneath that, and they insert right above the elbow and the inside of the upper arm bone, the place where pitchers point to, and it hurts. And yet they're having tightness in their forearm. It's not really the pronators and supinators doing it. It's the muscles of the fingers and the wrist, which that whole body, the whole part of the body is so complex. So not only is starting to bring the talk about the hand and the fingers into play for improvement of performance, since we now know things are going crazy with what they're trying to do, but also on the level of trying to have better forearm health. So I want to jump into the whole idea of the hand. So these are some things that I found in the research. So everything I'm saying is from research. It can be I can reference it for anybody who's interested in knowing what articles that I've read. And this is a culmination right now. What I'm going to give you in just a few short minutes is a culmination of a lot of research I've done. And it's just the beginning. And what I just wanted to do is isolate some of the things about controlling the ball that are relevant to the conversation we're having today. And then I want to get right into videos and drills that everyone can do. So for all the listeners, you'll be able to find all the visual stuff and the podcast on YouTube at Angel Borrelli Pitching. And you're going to want to definitely see the videos because these are things that I designed to make it easy for pitchers to do things prior to their throwing, and also some ideas for what they can do when they're off the field in the gym. So the first thing that came to mind when I was thinking about and actually watching some of the pitches get out of control is, and especially with this report, because they said that these guys who are being hit with balls that are missing way high, and that this high inside pitch is what's causing so many problems. Is that correct to your knowledge, Larry?
Yeah, mostly, I'd say that's where most of the guys are getting hit. It's usually right on right, left on left. Right-handed pitcher, right-handed hitter, left-handed pitcher, left-handed hitter.
Okay. So, Larry, the most interesting thing is that in the research, when I was looking at everything about, they're looking at what the ball actually, what the fingers are doing against the ball and how they work with the seam. But one of the most interesting and intriguing parts of research they're doing and have been doing on the ball is the actual way the ball rolls through the hand and into the fingertips, and how, if that's not done correctly, the ball is released too soon and it ends up with an upward trajectory. And in research, article after research, they're all in agreement on this. And I find this to be so intriguing because location is everything, keeping the ball down is everything. Or let's say this, just producing the pitch you hope you're producing and putting it where you think you're putting it. And if we can take this to the way the hand releases the ball and make sure that we're at least following some of the things they know about this, what a great way to practice and focus. And sometimes research suggests something, and it may or may not be right for that pitcher. It may not even make sense to that pitcher. But if you say it to him and he's got it in his head, and then he starts to maybe have a different intent about his pitch. For example, research shows that the middle finger, if it stays on the ball longer, it has better control. And that if the ball rolls up too soon in the hand, in other words, the middle finger isn't on the ball long enough, that the ball will have an upward trajectory and will probably end in a miss. Now, just that piece of information, isn't that cool?
Oh yeah, I mean, and it makes sense because from my vantage point, from the way we talk about pitching or what I say, which would be probably quite a bit different than how you're going to verbalize it, is just you want him to stay over the ball. You want him to have some leverage. You want him to, you're much stronger when you're over the ball, so to speak. It doesn't mean you're literally on top of it or over it, but it's certainly like it. You end up letting go of the ball in front of your face, so to speak, or eyebrow level. That over the ball where you have leverage and more control and command. But if you get too quick or try and do too much, sometimes I think then that's what you're talking about happens. That the ball, then you see the arm side misses. Where they're letting go of the ball too soon.
Right, exactly. But the cool thing about this is that, you can, and this is maybe a different way that somebody who's teaching about the body parts, the way they work in the motion is compared to a coach. So, for example, if I say something to a pitcher, if it's not specific, he might hear one thing and another pitcher might hear another thing. To be able to boil this down, yes, being behind the ball, staying with the ball, having leverage over the ball. But if you can take that and quantify it down to, and that means your middle finger, blah, 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 however it is that a coach who experiences it, like you were a pitcher, and anytime a pitcher, anybody out there, if you throw the ball and you start paying attention to the middle finger and you start thinking about how long it's on the ball, and let's say you're throwing a ball into the net and then you start to play around with that, it gives you that ability to have a more concrete way to deal with any issue you might be having. So the beauty of being able to name body parts and what they do, particularly with the release, which is so sensitive, is it gives you a place where you can start to practice something only then to not have to think about it. But it's also a way of strengthening the finger. So, regardless if it's part of the communication to the pitcher, by knowing that, then drills can be designed that get that finger stronger and better able to do what it does. And the fingers do a very interesting thing on ball release. They don't just, muscles, when if we do a bicep curl, we take the dumbbell and we contract it upward and then we lower it slowly. And that's a certain type of contraction. The fingers actually are contracted around the ball, and at release, they literally stretch open and then recontract again. There's this like double, triple mechanism that they go through with different types of contractions. So, to just strengthen the hand in a way that works for just like plain old strength in the fingers is one thing. But understanding that they open and close and open again is a very interesting, actually, they open, close very quickly, adds another component to how we can actually strengthen the fingers. All the research that has been done that I read ended with that fingers need to be stronger, and that when they produce these charts where they look at the velocity of the finger compared to the force the fingers are presenting onto the ball as it releases, what they're able to extrapolate in their scientific methods is to say that the pitcher who is throwing 100 miles an hour is actually having had a certain number percent of pound force on the ball. In other words, to throw harder, you would have to have an increased rate or force of flexion on the ball. And the recommendation is that, of course, that we start to consider the strength of the flexors of the fingers if we want our guys to not only throw harder, but to protect their arm when they do throw harder, because they're throwing harder with a stronger muscle. And that to me is amazing. So just listen to the pounds about this. I mean, when they do research, they talk in newtons. Do you know what a newton is? I mean, how many pounds are in a newton, Larry? I mean, I don't know.
I would
Right?
fail miserably. I have no idea.
Oh my God. Actually, it's 4.44 newtons equals 1 pound. I mean, I had to Google it. In graduate school, I was Googling it. I'm still Googling milliseconds. I mean, ask me about 12 inches are in a foot and 3 feet are in a yard. But yeah, no, science is, but my brain never wanted to learn those details. So I converted this down into like plain English. So one show we were talking about the amount of pressure. So here's what we want. And I'm going to kind of reverse engineer location. And then we're going to end up with where we ended last podcast with which is that ball position. So when the ball is at max external rotation, that is when the ball is behind, which we've been talking about. We want it behind, and we want it to then be able to just immediately rotate forward through the shoulder. That's the position where the ball has the greatest amount of, the fingers have the greatest amount of force on the ball. And the reason for that is, even though the hand's under the ball, so it's actually not possibly going to drop out of the hand. The reason for that is because as they're rotating, and right after that, the shoulder is rotating backward, and and this is the moment prior to acceleration, because the shoulder rotates so quickly, the grip on the ball has to be really there in order to accommodate the forces that are being produced by the shoulder. And so that is why, and I've converted this to normal pounds. That is why that for the research they were showing, there's about 45 pounds of pressure that the pitcher is holding the ball with when it is in max external rotation. This would be an adult male. So what's 45 pounds of a grip on a ball? Who knows, right? But here's what we know. It's got to be there. And then as the ball is starting to move into ball release, it's got about 21 pounds of pressure. And right at the moment before release, it's at about 18 pounds. So it gets less as you're about to release the ball. Your wrist is, of course, changing. And what they estimated is that the amount of force that they were measuring on the fingers to release the ball, and with these numbers here, which was kind of the norm, that the fingers themselves at producing that amount of force were already maxed out at about 80% of what a finger could produce. So the fingers are already working like mad. And what they said in this one article was so impressive. And this is where they said, if you want to throw 100 miles an hour or more, that 21 pounds of pressure that happens right before you're going to release the ball, like milliseconds before, needs to be at least 23 or 24 pounds. So there's got to be an increase in the strength of those fingers, which you can only produce the strength that you have. Thus, the recommendation for more finger flexion. That's that grabbing around the ball, that kind of force. So I found that to be unbelievable, because what that does is it creates a pathway to improvement for the hand and the fingers for not only in the direction of injury prevention, but performance. And we love things that do both. And the interesting thing is most things that are correct actually do both. The better you are, if you can strengthen those things that get injured, usually those things that get injured have direct effect on your performance. So I thought that was so interesting. What do you think about that?
Yes, very interesting. A little over my head, but I mean, I get it, and I get it, but it's just
Well, okay, so I'm going to bring it down so it's not over your head, because if it's over your head, it's over the listener's head. So now listen.
yep,
And of course, I tell my clients this when they're throwing, and it always has a direct effect immediately because I don't say it this way. When the ball's in the back, grab the ball the hardest. As it's coming through, you have to keep gripping on it so the ball doesn't fall down out of your hand. And then right before, have a nice tight grip as you pull against the ball. And that's how you say it. Now, doesn't that make sense? Have the best grip on the ball when it's behind you.
got it. I mean,
Yes, and use that middle finger. All I say is use the middle finger. You don't have to tell the pitcher the details because they know how to pitch. But the last time, in fact, one of my pitchers said to me, I don't remember the last time I thought about my middle finger pulling against the ball or how long it's on the ball. And I said, yeah, well, you're in a session. Why don't you? And that's why we're thinking about it. And he turned to me after throwing and said, you know what? I actually am starting to feel the friction on my fingertips. The pitchers that are doing the best right now, they know this stuff. The ones that are involved in doing research on pitch design and how to improve their pitch and their spin rate, because, when you listen to the shows and they're interviewing these guys, this is what pitchers are sounding like. Oh, yes, in the off season, I worked with trying to improve my spin rate and I worked with pitch design, and that's why I'm developing this pitch. And so they know this kind of stuff and on some level. Now, does that make more sense?
complete sense. I think the more you've thrown a ball or the more you've pitched, the longer you've done it, the more you can relate to it. The better you understand this. For the novice or the young pitcher, I don't know that they're even gonna like your student thought. He didn't even think of it till once he was aware of it and started thinking of it and knew how important it was. And then when you can begin to feel those things, I think that's a good practice,
Exactly. And even for youth pitchers, because they're the ones getting hurt.
right?
So they're probably using their hands better than their body can handle. But, here's the thing. If the fingers are gripping the way they're supposed to grip, that engages the muscle. It's when they're doing it's like somebody trying to do a bicep curl and they don't have all their fingers around the dumbbell. If they curl up, they can hurt themselves because they didn't take advantage of the kind of strength that would be engaged by using all of the muscles. So it is important, but translating this for youth pitchers, when you put them in the position prior to throwing, you're just working with them, let's say in front of a net, and you're going to actually see some stuff. If you say to them when the ball's behind their head, hey, right here, have a nice tight grip on the ball, and it's going to loosen up as you throw, but make sure it's tight right there. And then make sure you feel yourself pulling against the ball as you release it. That's not too advanced for a youth pitcher. At the same time, it can start to engage all the muscles of that kid's arms. So I think we have to find that way to communicate it. Now, my job with this podcast is to explain it in concepts to you guys who are out there in the trenches so that you can take it and you can go, what? And then you can take a ball and you can feel it. And then guess what? You put it in your own words and then you teach it. But for the guy who's got forearm pain, for the guy who's missing high all the time, take a look at these issues because it is another thing to look at to see if you can get to the source of the problem, which we all know all day long. That's what we're doing. We're trying to solve problems with our pitchers' performance in one way or another. Does that all make sense?
No doubt. Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
Now, the last thing before we look at all the videos is, so remember last week we were talking about that perfect position we saw from Giolito and Bieber as they're coming into max external rotation.
Yeah.
And then we knew that their next motion was going to be to where they're lined up, they're in max external rotation, and the ball is ready to go forward through the use of their shoulder. All of what we're talking about here with the way the fingers work kind of goes out the window if the ball's not ready to be accelerated when the pitcher squares up to the plate. If the ball's still stuck by his ear, if he isn't squared up and he's facing, off to the side, then his forearm, his elbow's going to come through sooner than his shoulder. He's going to have rotation in his forearm. And as I've always said, just rotate your forearm and you'll see the minute you move that forearm, the hand changes. So the hand that you think is behind the ball is not going to be behind the ball, so that all of this stuff about the fingers goes out the window, because then as he's delivering, he's literally manipulating his wrist to then try to be behind the ball. And the thing that's going to suffer is would be his grip and the release. So when you're talking about trying to use the fingers correctly, you have to kind of say, hey, well, we got to get away for the pitchers to start to really feel what the shoulder does correctly when the forearm's in the right place and how the shoulder brings the hand forward. So what I did is in these next 6 videos we're going to see is I did a step-by-step process of drills, not talking about what you're doing wrong, talking about things to practice so you start to get a sense of the way the shoulder brings the hand and the hand is perfectly positioned, so then you can start to do the things with your fingers. The other thing is all of these drills are to bring awareness to the fingers and also to strengthen them. If the research says we need to strengthen the finger flexors, well, guess what? That's right up my alley. We need to strengthen the finger flexors. So there's ways to do it. And so let's jump into the videos and maybe all this will start making more sense. So let's go to the first video, number 1, which is called the ball drop. And this was on another one of my podcasts. And this just wakes the hand up. And in order to catch that ball, he's got to put his fingers in a certain position where he's, without thinking, just working exactly the way the fingers have to flex to grab the ball each time. This is a great drill and it takes nothing. And since they're at the field and they always have a ball in their hand, and let's assume they've just finished their warm up, they can go ahead and do this drill, and that wakes up the fingers, which leads now to the second drill. So all these work in order. So this is the drill where you're going to do it in a number of two different ways. You're going to take the index finger and start making the tosses. I also had this in a different podcast. You're going to use just the middle finger. I don't know which one he's using here. I can't tell. And then you're going to tell him after he's doing that to do the index finger. And a lot of the guys do the index, then they do the middle, one or the other first, and then they go back and forth telling each finger to do the job. And what I've also seen my pitchers do is spread their arms out, so the force of the throw has to be a little bit greater. Now, what this does is it wakes up the fingers. The fingers have more nerves than any other part of the body. And I mean, think about what our hands do all day, nonstop. They're very teachable. And so in order to wake them up, you just have to give them little things like this. So you've done the ball drop, then you're doing a middle finger throw, and I call these finger flips, and then a middle finger, index finger. And now let's open up the next drill. And this is the drill that I just designed. Now, this is an important drill. So he's got to use his left hand to control the ball, because this isn't a drill where you're trying to have him do anything other than exercise the fingers. In this drill, and this is my job, there are different types of contractions that occur in the fingers during ball release. So to just do one type of contraction in a drill is incomplete. So what I wanted to do was see if I could mimic the quickness. And of course, the ball's not going anywhere. And his thumb isn't involved in this because he has to control it. But what he's doing with both fingers, and by the way, the ball moves when you're doing this. So, you can start against the seams, but it's going to move. The idea of this is that the fingers are rounded over the ball. They're flexing, extending, and flexing. Flex, extend, flex. So they're going back to the original position. And what this does, and the wrist is in extension, what this does is train not just the fingers to be stronger, but it also trains the type of contraction. And every pitcher I've given this to absolutely loves it. And you know what? They're the ones I trust. So, and it doesn't work unless they like it.
Good one. I think this is important for the folks. Like I know I would have some guys that don't really understand what it feels like, what the ball really feels like coming off your hand. I don't know. That's one of the first things I thought of when I saw it was, wow, there's certainly some guys out there that don't understand what it feels like. And
Well, you know what's interesting is when you introduce something like this, next thing you'll see a pitcher doing something a little different with it. And it's because he figured that out, or you as a coach. But yes, my style of teaching is to educate first with knowledge, even if it goes over your head. And say,
that
hey,
sounds
the
hard to
pitches are,
me.
hey, that was a perfect comment to make today, Larry. The my pitch went over your head. Ha ha.
Oh,
Okay. So I missed high. So there it is. We're all human, right?
exactly.
But I did go inside and low on the next pitch, right? And I got you,
Yeah,
right?
you did.
Okay. So
Punch me out.
but no, yes, you're absolutely right. All these things will mean something different to each pitcher, but we've got to bring attention to the fingers. Okay. It addresses a lot of different things, and it's been a long time coming. So now let's open up the next video. So now this is the drill I designed to teach the pitcher something that is the most important thing pitchers have to know. And by the way, you'll see that he has a baseball in each hand. I am not teaching pitching here. This is to keep him from trying to pitch. It also just keeps everything level. And you'll notice because he's a right-handed pitcher, you could tell he's trying to reach up. But so he's starting in a 90-degree position. And because he's on the floor, the right arm is not, he's a right-handed pitcher, is not externally rotating. Okay, it's not pre-stretched, but he's in external rotation. What this teaches is that when the shoulder acts correctly, the shoulder brings the hand, it doesn't bring the elbow. And that's what you're teaching. So because we want this here is the perfect alignment for the shoulder to go forward with its greatest speed. If that right arm, if the right elbow was bent, tell me if you can picture this, Larry. If when he was on the floor, that forearm was angling in towards his head and the ball was more at the maybe in line with the shoulder, he couldn't do this exercise. The shoulder would move slowly, so he probably could do it, but the shoulder would be tightened up and he wouldn't be able to go forward. By having them just do this drill, it starts to give them the feel of the beauty of the shoulder delivering the ball. And by the way, if you want to throw hard, the shoulder has to deliver the hand. You can't lead with the elbow and expect the elbow to do it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And this is simple. And we do this on the field now. These are all things to do before they throw.
This is the best drill I think I've ever seen from you right here. This is my favorite so far.
Thank you
That one's my
so
favorite.
much. Thank you
It is.
so much.
It is.
See, I knew I was going to
It is.
have something that worked for you today. Okay. You just got to give me a minute.
Oh,
Okay.
awesome.
Yes. So now let's go open the next one, which is taking that and making it happen. Now, this is one that I do in the mirror. As you saw, we were getting ready to go out and throw. So now I have him put the hand in the ball release position that he just designed. He designed that for himself because he saw that's where his arm would be. And now we've got the ball starting at release. He brings it back. Now he gets a little more external rotation. And what he's seeing in the mirror is he's seeing that the shoulder brings the hand. Shoulder rotates the hand forward. He's nice and behind the ball. And by this time, he's done all the finger stuff. So now he's really holding on to that ball. Plus, because he's not throwing it, he has to grip it so it doesn't fall. So now what you've done is you've activated everything. And now, does that make sense, Larry?
100%. Looks great.
Yeah. And when I had him do this the first time, I had his other arm moving too, and he looked at me. He said, "Angel, can I just do my pitching arm?" And that tells me it needs to just be the pitching arm. So that's how we got to this. Now, for the last drill before they throw, and by the way, this takes 5 minutes, if that. So now this is what I do. Okay, as crazy as this might look. So I want to explain to you. The shoulder has specific movements it makes in pitching. And those movements do not change because the pitcher starts sideways and then rotates. The shoulder actions, if you read the description as to what does it happens in a pitching motion, it does not matter if he's rotating his body or not, the shoulder's the same. So because I'm working with him being behind the ball, I'm working with his grip. I'm working with where he's releasing the ball. I'm working with him not leading with the elbow. I have him facing the target in the glove. And right here, you see the exact motion of throwing. And you see how perfectly he's mimicking what he did on the floor?
Right. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, because the turning gets everybody confused. Now, why did I design this drill? I designed this drill because when I had to learn pitching, and as a kinesiologist, you're reading biomechanics research, it's going, okay, you abduct the arm, and then you bend the elbow to 90 degrees, and then you turn and blah, 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 blah. So there's a very specific language we have. So I learned to pitch like this. Then I had to add in the body, and then I figured it all out. Now, why do we turn if you can throw so well like this? Well, if you have somebody who doesn't know how important rotation is, this is the drill for them because you can only get so much force from just the shoulder. The force comes up through the ground into your rotation, and the rotation delivers the ball. And the difference in this throwing and then throwing if he's actually sideways is that your body turns away from the arm and gives it more stretch. See, as he stretches backwards, that degree of stretch will be greater because he had rotation of the trunk as part of it. And there you go.
Pretty good.
So it's a 6-step process. And then, of course, from there, he backed up the net and he just started throwing. And it was an amazing thing to see. And this is the day when he said, wow, I'm feeling more friction against the fingers. The ball was doing what he wanted. The pitcher, I don't do anything unless I've run it through all my guinea pigs. I design in the lab, my little lab, which is the gym. And then I give it to the guys, and then they look at me and they shake their head and they go, "This is good." And they're used to it by now. But anyway, so this is my plan so that we can maybe save some hitters from being hit in the head and maybe pitchers locating their pitches.
Yeah.
So, and I'm hoping that everybody grasps onto this and then goes even further with creating ideas for let's get our pitchers' hands stronger. It's sort of, to me, it was like, duh. And by the way, everyone, if you own my, and so let me mention 3 ways to strengthen in the gym. And if you own my strength training book for the elbow, so these were exercises I was on 2 years ago. But to me, using the ball is where you have to do it. But in the gym, you absolutely want to do the rice bucket. You absolutely want to do cable, flexions and extensions. And you absolutely want to do wrist flips, which is where I use weighted balls. It's the only thing I used weighted balls for. And that's where you support your arm and you're just doing the wrist actions, and they actually go through all their different pitches. And if you own my book, all 3 of those exercises aren't in my book. And if you don't own my book, consider getting it because it's a great book full of exercises for each of the elbow, forearm, wrist and finger muscles. So anyway, so that's my complete training program for the finger flexors.
Really good stuff, Angel. Very good.
Oh, I'm so
I'm
glad.
gonna use it. Yeah, I'm definitely going to use some of that stuff. Absolutely. Use all of it.
Thank you
Great.
so much.
Well, I have guys in mind that I think it would help, on our club. So that's good. definitely help.
Yes, somebody's going to get something from something, and you know what? You're going to also see guys be creative with it and then figure things out.
No doubt.
And that's what I love. I love seeing something that is organic and that you can improve on it. And all the coaches out there with your creativity, I hope that you can do the same with that.
Awesome.
Awesome. So we pulled it out.
You did it.
Okay. I knew the minute I mentioned Newtons, you were going to go crazy. Aren't you glad I went just converted them into pounds? I mean, even I was going crazy.
I'm too simple-minded. Pounds are good.
Listen, Joe, just so you know, I am very simple-minded. I work in concepts. I had to have a math tutor. I had to take statistics 5 times, and I almost dropped out of school because of that class. No, seriously, I am in that department. So keeping it simple is good. So I'm glad you hung with me on this, Larry. And the good news is you can always call me later if you didn't understand something.
No, I'll do that.
Hey, and you know what? That's why I have you here, because if you're not getting it, and by the way, you can't play, that with me because you are a genius head coach. So I've already seen you in action, so I already know that. But the reason why I love having you here and I appreciate it is because if you're confused, somebody else is confused too. And my job is to teach with clarity, not confuse. So, so you kept me in line today. So anyway, so thank you so much for being here again, Larry. I know it's the busy time of the year for you, so I so appreciate it. And everyone, remember, you can go to Angel Borrelli Pitching on YouTube to see all these drills. If you're just going to listen, iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, remember to email me if you have any questions at angel@gymscience.com. Visit my website, gymscience.com, and send your questions or any topics you would like to see covered. And thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.